a story about Baylor. There's been a lot of decisions, a lot of rulings about Baylor and a lot of things that they've been through, things they didn't do well enough or things that were blamed for them or they were blamed for. Today, there was an actual jury down in Houston looking at a sexual assault case involving Baylor football players.
Yeah, this had to do with Trayvon Lewis, who was one of Matt Rule's first commits. This was all post-Briles stuff. It also involved a former player named John Arthur, and there was a third player as well, but I wasn't able to remember his name, nor do I know if I've even read the third player's name. I've pretty much only read Lewis and Arthur in all the articles that I've been keeping up with. But this had to do with the case where a young female student, alleged sexual assault. She was a freshman at the time, had sex with one or both of the players. There's like a switching thing going. It's complicated, but basic gist was like a sexual assault claim. And they've been on trial down in Houston, and the jury has come back with the ruling and said that part of this was also that, what's Baylor's culpability? It wasn't just like these two young men or three men and their innocence. It was also, Baylor bears some responsibility as far as this lawsuit said. So today the jury came back in Houston, and they have decided that Baylor has no responsibility for that sexual assault exploitation, as they labeled it, by 3 ex-football players. They also found, the jury in this civil trial, that they did not assault the woman who was a Baylor student-athlete at the time. So not only is Baylor not bearing responsibility, or not bearing responsibility according to the jury, but the players are not either. So that's very interesting, and this is the first big kind of trial that has happened, in the post Briles world. We've had all this talk about it and we knew about all these lawsuits, but the actual trials themselves were then delayed because of COVID. And so this one got underway a few weeks ago, and now it's come to a conclusion.
Here's the problem I have with it. Paula Levine, who we know was all over the sexual assault trial and all that stuff back in 15, 16, whatever, 17, 18, along with Mark Schlabach. She put out a tweet on May the 20th, and she mentioned that this was a trial, the post-scandal trial, first-time Baylor, post-Briles, etc. And then at the end of her tweet, after Baylor's promise to change, there was no need for that. Today, she came out and she reported, the jury in Houston, as Craig just mentioned. Baylor has responded, by the way, to that, in fact, the case and the verdict. I'm not going to read all of it, but this was an important decision that recognized Baylor as not the same institution as it was 3, 4, or even 5 years ago, when the university took several unprecedented actions, including leadership changes and the broad implementation of 105 campus-wide recommendations regarding its response to past incidents of sexual and interpersonal violence within the campus community.
I also think legally this is important because it needs to set precedent for things around what is a university responsible for? What are their duties, especially when something may not happen on their campus, it just happens between their students. Where does that line go? Because universities need to know that. They need to know what they need to do. They need to know what their level of responsibility is legally in protecting their students. They also need to know what they should do, again, in turning this over to the authorities, who are the ones who have the expertise to investigate it, not the universities.
Well, and it's very clear that Baylor didn't know what those limitations were, and nor did many universities, right? And so, yeah, you're right. It kind of provides some clarity of okay, are we all of a sudden responsible for off-campus student happenings? Okay, if we are, how are we supposed to manage that, And that was what some of the claims were there was one case where it happened 7 miles away or something, and it's why didn't Baylor do anything? Well, what are they supposed to do? Honestly, I'm not even questioning them having, but tell me, I don't think the schools know what they're supposed to do. If it happens off campus on a Saturday night, what is Baylor supposed to do about that? Unless, obviously if somebody reports it, then that's where Baylor got itself in trouble, was not handling the reporting process correctly. But as far as culpability, I don't know how they're culpable in any way.
The government has been kind of famous for this over the years, in that I can give you an example of, Florida had a real bad problem with the sugar growers dumping pollutants into the water, into the canals, and got all through the rivers and water supplies and killed a bunch of fish a few years ago. And their response to that was okay, we're going to create a commission that's going to regulate it. Who's on the commission? The sugar farmers. Well, that's like telling your kids, don't eat cookies. You make the rules. There's the jar over there. I don't know the rules. And then it was the same way with Title IX, in that they gave them kind of broad things that they had to do to get under the, to fit under the rules, well, then everybody's just going to do the bare minimum.
Yes.
So you can't let them. You need to, if you want something to be regulated, you have to regulate it. You have to say this is the rule. Otherwise, if you leave it up to interpretation, people are going to get hurt because the people who don't care or don't think it's a problem aren't going to do anything about it.
Yeah. So that, and listen, this is not a win-loss column.
No.
We're talking about something that's not good, but this is the first time it seemed like that I can remember where Baylor, in any kind of a trial that players have been involved, student athletes have been involved, students have been involved, in which this particular case, the jury said that Baylor had no blame here.
What?
And it seems as if perhaps they also handled this correctly when, in fact, the incident occurred, even though I think there was a delay before Title IX did get involved. But those players were separated. I think they may have been on the sideline for one game. Remember, the local TV station made a big deal out of that.
Yep.
But they were separated. They were put in the Title IX, and then eventually those student athletes did not return, I think, either to the school and or the football program.
And that's what I was saying earlier about, like, you take every accusation seriously, of course, but, like, people with they saw Trayvon Lewis on the sideline. I mean, the man's just been accused of something, but they're wanting him to already be in jail. You know what I mean? And, like, that's just so extreme, and there's got to be a better balancing act that's beneficial and safe, not only for the person making the claim, but also the person who might be wrongfully accused. You know, you can't just throw them in jail because then you can just go around accusing anybody anything and getting them popped in jail. That's not right either. So, you know, hopefully, like this has maybe opened some eyes that, you know, not everything is guilt, 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 guilt. This leads to conversations, or has already led to conversations, where we can have more of a proper balance so that you're not afraid to move forward with allegations, but you're also not afraid that if allegations do come forth that might not be true, that you're totally written off completely in life just because of one thing someone said for whatever crazy reason they might want to falsely accuse. So, yeah, I know that there was a post just now, and I know we got to go, but if you're a premium board member, I posted this story. I just posted the tweet. And the first response, I think, is a very good read from good old Franco. If you remember the premium board, you know Franco.
Everyone knows him.
He's the first one to respond to this, and I would go check out that post because it's a positive post that's not taken away from the young woman in this case at all.
All right, I wish we could read it to you, because if you're a premium member, you would love to hear what Franco posted, including contact. I'll say this: contact with John Arthur. So
yes.
that's in there.
Who was one of the three accused.
Yeah, as well. And then maybe there's an opportunity, you know.
The very end of his message is very cool in regards to John Arthur's future. I'll say that.
Hell yeah, it is. And if you are SicEm365 premium member, that is in what Craig posted about the jury in Houston found Baylor was not to blame for the sexual assault incident and or allegations against 3 former student athletes.